Good morning, Remy.
Good morning, Breck.
It's like a 2 cup water coffee this morning.
Yeah.
Neither Remy nor I felt like doing morning this morning.
No, I don't feel like doing mornings most mornings, honestly.
I think it's definitely harder for me. I don't know. It depends on the season, what we're going into with fall, winter. It gets a lot worse for me. Does it for you? Or you're like
Yeah,
even keel the whole way through?
I've always kind of been a night person. We've just been working really hard lately, so now I'm way more tired at night. But I used to be someone that would rather work until 2 o'clock in the morning than wake up at like 6. I'd rather work all night than wake up early.
Yeah, I like to be, well, I don't know. What time do you go to bed usually? I like to be in bed by 10:30, and a lot of people think that's late, but
Like midnight or 1.
That's when you go to bed?
Yeah.
No wonder you don't want to get up in the morning. All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, or whatever you're watching this. Welcome to Coffee with the Cowgirls. I'm Breck Kruger.
And I'm Remy Greer.
And I've missed you, Remy.
Yeah, you had a nice week at the lake, I hope.
Yes. It's a little... Well, I love the lake. Love the lake. Love Bad Medicine. My kids love it, so that is worth all of it in the end anyway. But I don't really fish, Remy. I don't. Just along for the ride.
I saw your big catch, so you shouldn't say you don't fish.
Don't be jealous, Remy. And I did that all by myself.
You should be really proud. Pat yourself on the back right there.
I do have to tell this funny story because I think it'll give people like a little glimpse into my life and how competitive everything has to be. For me, I do not fish. I do not know anything about fishing pools, driving a boat, what hook you would use to catch whatever fish in different kinds of waters. I know none of that. I don't want to know any of that. So I thought, and like I do this all the time, like, this is going to be so awesome. We're really going to be making a memory here. I'm going to go out in this boat with my son and his friend and Brandon, and I'm going to have a beer and maybe throw a line in the water. I don't know. It's just going to be something that I'm going to remember for a long time. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So I get on the boat with them, and Brandon's like, you know what, Mom? You fish. Bodie will drive the boat. He got his boater's license now. You fish. This is going to be really fun for you. I'm like, okay. So I stick the line in the water and then heard for the next hour how I didn't have my line out far enough. The tip of the pole wasn't down, like tipped down, I guess. That's the thing. And then I was catching a lot of fish, but apparently I wasn't setting the hook. So then I got like a 15-minute lesson on how to set the hook. I don't really care, Remy. They're like, you're losing so many fish. And I'm like, listen, folks, I didn't come out here to get yelled at. I really didn't want to learn this. So you guys need to settle down. Yeah, but we feel like you're catching big ones out there, but you're not setting it right. And then you're losing them. And what are you even doing, Breck? I'm like, okay.
You just said I'm feeding the fish. That's what I'm doing. They're taking the bait. I'm feeding the fish.
I don't know how to drive the boat, but I think I'm going to give that a try. Like, you take the pole. I don't want it anymore. It's really not as relaxing as I thought it was going to be. So, yes, that's my fishing story. I think next time I'll let them make the memories and I'll stay back at the cabin.
You know what? That's such a mom thing too, right? Like, I'm going to have the perfect Christmas and it's all going to be great and everything's going to be awesome. And then you're wrapping presents at 2:00 in the morning and Christmas dinner isn't ready and you didn't make the right kind of scalloped potatoes for everyone in your household. So,
yeah, I know. I'm kind of used to that kind of lifestyle now. So it's like, it is what it is. It used to cause me anxiety, but not so, I don't know. I probably still get a little nutso, but. And you guys, you, James, were all the boys there, or was it just Braden?
Yeah, we took all the boys. Only 2 of them rode, but we took all the boys.
Braden and Kyle, right?
Yep.
Yep. So James, Remy, Braden, Kyle, well, all their family, but Braden and Kyle rode, and Brandon were all out in Reno at the Western States production. Is it Western Finals? I don't even know what
it's Western Regional Finals.
Okay.
I looked at that again. I didn't remember last week either. I call it Western Regional, so that's what we're gonna go with.
Yeah. Anyway, super fun time for all of them. I wasn't there, but I'll let Remy tell. I was watching on Sunday a lot. I spent a lot of time watching. I love watching all of them compete. It's fun.
No, we had a really good show. I won 2 classes. Brandon had a hell of a show on the Big Gambler. I did not make that finals. I watched that finals. And then James ended up winning. He placed in a bunch of classes. He and Braden made the 11-2 finals out of
which was so cool.
It's super awesome. And then, of course, he's Braden's hyper competitive, so he was disappointed that he didn't win. And I was like, you made the finals out of a lot of teams. And then James ended up winning High Point, and I was reserve High Point. So it was a good weekend. Clients rode well. We had fun. The boys made some new friends. I got a lot of compliments on the boys, not just on their riding, but on their personalities. So it was a good weekend all the way around.
It did look like a really fun weekend. I was good with watching from afar, but I feel like I become like some crazy psycho person. Trying to watch it all and keep it all straight.
Well, I do the same thing. We'll be going somewhere and I'm watching like a show I'm watching like a event on my phone. I'm like yelling at my phone. Like that's going to help them anyway. Like they can hear me through my phone, but I can't help myself. So I totally understand.
Same girl, same. What else has happened in the last couple weeks?
You had your speaking engagement on Monday.
I did yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about anxiety today. And, like when I got the offer to do it, I'm like, oh yeah, but I would love to do that. Not only, I just think it's like so cool that I get to give back to the school that I loved. And I just thought I was excited to do it. But then the closer it came, I was like, it was real. And I had a lot of anxiety about what I was going to say. And I struggled with what I was going to say for a long time. Literally wrote this speech. I think it took me 7 hours. I wrote it. And at the end of it, I scrapped it all. And I'm like, this is not, why am I overthinking this? Anxiety though, that is anxiety. And it all went fine. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it.
No, it's always hard to do public speaking too, because the problem is you want to know what you want to say, but you can't really rehearse what you say or else you sound like a robot.
I know. You do. And public speaking is hard. But I knew so we're going to talk about anxiety today, like I said, but I think anxiety kind of holds you back. It tries to hold you back from doing something, right? And you think about all the things that could go wrong. And if you stop yourself from doing it, then it just keeps building every time. So I just said, I have a few ideas in my head of how I'm going to approach this or tackle this speech. I went out and did it. It was good. It was really good until I could see I was losing people. And then I was like, oh God. Then I started to get a little anxiety and panicked and ended it not the way I wanted to, but I learned, and I think that's the key or moral to this story, is you have to jump even though it's uncomfortable, because it was not comfortable being up there, but I knew that if I did it this one time that it would be a lot easier the next time I do it, and I would have a better idea of what to prepare for and how to make it better. And I know that that's what happened, so I like that.
No, and it's they're college kids, like they're college freshmen. Who cares if you look silly in front of them?
I know
you care. I know you care, but a lot of times when you really think about who you might embarrass yourself in front of, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and the chances that they remember are very unlikely. So, yeah. All right. Should we start our discussion about anxiety?
Yeah, let's get started.
Do you have it?
I do not. That is not my crippling mental health problem. I deal with depression. I do not deal with anxiety. I know plenty of people that deal with diagnosed and undiagnosed anxiety. I feel it creeping in every once in a while, and I think what's hard too is like some anxiety is warranted, right? Not actual anxiety, but like that feeling sometimes is warranted. Now, how do you manage that, right? So,
Oh.
so it is what you said was true, right? And this is I know to be true as being friends and very close with people that legitimately have anxiety is your one failure. Gotta get my angle right. So for me, depression doesn't let me act sometimes, right? I have to force myself to act because that's what depression does. But anxiety, like my one failure is not tied to every other failure, right? It is that failure. It makes that easier for me. It's like you say, like I say stuff is easy. It is for me. But and I say that not being conceited. And okay, so going back to I'm gonna tie this back to Reno really quickly. So we went to Reno, we competed, and we got done with the weekend. And James goes, "You make everything look really easy. It looks so easy for you." And I was like, "It is easy. I know what I'm doing. I hope I know what I'm doing by now. If I don't, okay." But for him, again, he's someone that deals with anxiety. So he has to prove himself every time. And like I said, if I fail once, and it's part of the reason failure isn't crippling for me, if I fail once, I failed at that thing and that thing alone, right? But if you have anxiety, and this is what you were talking about, it's now this like landslide of everything you've ever done wrong that's all connected to that one failure. It's not, and logically you know it's not, but it doesn't feel that way.
So I looked up the definition of anxiety and I about spit my coffee out because it says at the bottom, a certain level of anxiety helps us stay alert and aware. According to this, I'm extremely alert and aware.
But I mean, and that's what I deal with, and we deal with it as a horse trainer, right? There's anxiety about when clients have anxiety about their horses. But again, it's all that failure's tied to a lot of things, and there's a lot of stress that goes into it. And then normal stress now makes anxiety worse. So no, I don't deal with anxiety. I have other things wrong with me, just not that one. That's not the box I checked.
I've always dealt with it undiagnosed, but I know what it is. I don't need a doctor to tell me. And it affects me in different ways and different levels. So, like if a horse show scenario, I always joke that I'm the queen of callbacks. I can make a lot of callbacks. And my anxiety doesn't affect me, in that first go. It's like when you get to where it counts is where it affects me. So in the horse show arena, and now I've kind of learned how to navigate it. It'll still get me sometimes, but it's getting easier because I know the root of the problem. But it probably affects me way more in my day-to-day life than it does in the horse show scenario.
Well, it's kind of the same thing as you giving your speech to those kids, right? It's practice. Okay, so I've made a lot of second goes. How do I get out of the second go? Right? It's putting yourself out there over and over again until you can at least trap that anxiety in a little box. For at least
and that truly is a really good statement, actually. It is putting yourself out there until you get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Time and time again. And it sucks. Like I talked about that in my speech, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when you have anxiety, it's hard to do. Because your body, and for me, the anxiety wears me out. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I've dealt, and I say I don't have anxiety. I've dealt with it various times throughout my life. And again, some of it was warranted. Some of it was me being under massive amounts of stress. But I have had that deal where it's like, well, one thing didn't go right. So now I'm breathing faster and I've got to make this work. And now I don't feel, you feel like for me, I get tight chested. It doesn't happen to me very often, but I get tight chested. I get really worried. And then I have to stop and be like, fuck it. But again, I don't really deal with anxiety. Like having anxiety in a moment is not the same thing as really dealing with anxiety, right?
I'm going to
And
sound like a super crazy person.
yeah, and like I hear the crazy in my head sometimes, and I was like, you gotta stop.
Like I'm terrified of bridges, Remy. I get anxiety going across bridges. Now, when I'm driving by myself, I can just get in the passing lane, kind of close my eyes and just hammer down. Now, when I'm driving with Brandon and we've got the horse trailer on, I usually put my head between my legs and close my eyes because I have got some, but it's not something that just developed either. It's something I've had for a really long time and dealt with. I don't know. I've got really bad anxiety when it comes to, I do a lot with like new riders, beginning entry level riders. That causes me a lot of stress because I envision the worst things happening. And I don't know, but I think it also keeps them safe. Like, I will never, and I think that's the reason people trust me because they know I will never put them in a bad situation. I would never do that to anybody because I know what can happen. Can I tell you, I about shit my pants. Like a month ago, we had a guy that was wanting to look at saddles. And we were at a horse show, and all of our horses were tied to the trailer, saddled Remy. And I mean, they're horses. All of our horses are extremely gentle. I trust them. But would I ever get on one of them tied to the trailer in a saddle? Hell no. I mean, you don't know what they're going to do. That's like, I would never put anybody in that situation. I had my back turned. I turned back around, and he was sitting on one of our horses tied to the trailer. And I'm like, whoa, you should not be doing that. I mean, my heart started racing immediately. Every bad scenario, that horse, like, and I wasn't worried about the horse. I was worried about him. I'm like, he's going to get killed. And he's like, gets off of the horse and looks at me. He's like, shouldn't do that with that one. I'm like,
okay, but see, that's warranted anxiety, right? The horse sets back.
Anyone.
Yeah, but like the horse sets back and now he's in a wreck, or something moves too quickly and now he's tied off hard and fast to something else. That is warranted anxiety.
Yes.
Maybe it brought on other feelings, but you being worried about that is warranted. It should happen. That's like a giant no.
I'm telling you.
It's a lot, man.
My other anxiety is I had a really bad wreck trail riding when I was probably 13. And I do not like to trail ride because of that. Like, my idea of trail riding would be going down a gravel road, going through terrain or through the mountains would not be for me. Everybody's like, oh, let's do that Grand Canyon ride on the donkeys or mules. I'm out. I would pull one of those suckers off the ledge because I would not be able to just sit there, hang on, and do your thing. I would cause wreck with that. I know my limits and my boundaries, and that is outside of all of that. Not happening ever.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one of those things, right? Like where we can talk about where the trauma came from, but then how do you move on from it, right? And you don't have the ability to go you don't have the ability to go like practice throughout it because where you live now, where I live. So again, going back to James, I will ride down whatever rough country there is. I love it. I love riding through rough country. I love riding down hillsides. I love stuff you probably shouldn't ride down and you should get off and walk. Again, I don't have really bad experience. I used to trail ride a lot with my dad after when I was in school. Like he would pick me up and we'd go, and like he would take a machete. This is what we did. And he'd like cut paths and you'd go through it. And I thought it was great. I thought it was amazing. It was so much fun. And so to this day, like we got cattle to catch in rough country. It's me that goes and rides it. Now James grew up and they used to go out to places like in Prescott, Arizona, and then Baghdad, Arizona. And like you hear the stories and you see some of the videos. I now know why James is like, yeah, you go run up that hill. I'll walk down here, because he got in very bad situations and survived them. But he's like, yeah, I'm good. I've had enough of that for my entire life.
Yeah.
And again, like so I don't have anxiety. So the adrenaline's great for me. I love it. Like I thrive on it. But like, and it's not that I haven't had bad wrecks. I've had bad wrecks. They just don't hang with me for forever. And James is like, nah, I'm gonna walk this one down. Like I'm good. He's like, I'm cowboy enough to know I don't want to cowboy that hard.
Yeah, no, and it like for me on trail rides, especially ones that have any difficulty at all, my anxiety would not just be for me and my horse. It would be for you. It would be for James. It wouldn't be fun for me to do it because it's too much.
I will tell you some of our biggest fights have happened gathering cattle because like I'll go running across something, right? Like, oh, we're going to get him turned. And James is at a long trot and it's nothing against him. And he's right, we'll get him caught. But I'm like, I want to get him caught now. So I'd go running across stuff and you can hear the fear in his voice when he's like, stop.
Because you're going to break a horse's leg or something.
You're going to break a horse's leg. I'm going to get in a wreck. And for what? To get cows caught. And I'm just like, I'm good. I'm running. I trust what I'm on. I'm going to go. And again, it's not because it's just that whole difference in attitude and opinion and mental health, right? Like this is a real thing because people shake off anxiety and, you know, so many people talk about having anxiety that people kind of scoff at it. Well, again, like we're in a whole new world. And I think that's part of the reason you see the rise of anxiety too. Aside from that, normally people had anxiety. I think you see so many more people with anxiety because we've been cloistered off from each other more and more because of social media and the internet being able to do everything on this, right? And then now you couple that with COVID, so people have to be at home. Not now, but they did, right? And so you don't have you are now having to deal with a lot more emotions in a different way and you don't have to process them in the same way. And that's why I think you see a lot more kids having anxiety than you had before.
I think it's genetic.
And I think that's too, but I think, you know, I think it's one of those things where it's like, I think it's one of those things where you see it, right? And so some people can learn to manage it better. It doesn't mean it doesn't rear its ugly head. Because I see it in, like, I have 2 boys where you can really see that tendency. It's not horrible. It's not crippling yet, but you see that tendency. And the other 2 are more like me, where it's just like, all right, cool. And people take that as me being flippant. I'm not, but my brain doesn't register that way. But like my one son really likes to have a schedule. So if you say we're going to eat dinner at 8:06 and it's 8:07, well, you said we were going to eat dinner. And now it triggers this whole waterfall of things that you didn't do when you said you were going to do them. And it gets taken as being, you know, as him being difficult. He's not being difficult, but his brain was like, we were supposed to do this. If I do this, then I get this response. And for him, it's frightening. And he'll tell you that, like, he gets worried and he can't stop. And he'll say that. I was talking to him, and as a mother, it was heartbreaking. I'm like, you have the ability to stop this, right? You have the ability to stop acting like this. He goes, I know, Mama, I try and I can't. He was like 5 years old, and it broke my heart. Because he realized, like, yeah, you're right, but I can't. I've tried and I can't.
I'm a little, you know, now that you say that, I think about myself. And for me, okay, so like I have a list of things in my head that I'm going to do. Let's just say I'm going to do chores in the morning, and then I'm going to clean stalls, and then I'm going to sweep the alleyway, and then I'm going to rake somewhere, and then I'm going to saddle horses. For me, I can't go out of that order. I have to complete one task before I can go on to the next. It's really, I don't know. It's like a habit for me.
But it's a coping mechanism, right?
It is.
Because for anxiety, you're not just you're afraid of every bad outcome, right? You don't really look for the good outcomes, every bad thing that can go wrong. So if I can control my actions, right? If you can control your actions, if I'm gonna do chores and then I'm gonna sweep the alley, if I do all these things, then I know what is happening next. I am in control of the next thing, right? And again, like I am married to someone that deals with anxiety, and it's different in men than it is in women. And also, it's one of those things where, like, you know, he doesn't want to say that he's diagnosed, and he's not diagnosed. I just see the behavior, and I see it with people that are diagnosed with anxiety. It
Well,
also makes
James
you
has learned how to deal with it over
deal
the
with
years,
it, right?
as
And
have I.
it makes you in some ways really efficient. It makes you really good at predicting outcomes. And it's this, like, when James talks about competing, right? He knows every bad outcome. He expects every bad outcome. He rides for the best, but he expects every bad outcome. And I know all the bad outcomes. I just don't dwell on them. And again, that's not because I'm better than someone. Like, I don't say this from a judging point of view. My brain just doesn't function that way.
Yeah.
I feel like I've prepared for the worst. We're gonna go hope for the best. And again, it's not me being flippant. It's just how I'm wired. Like, I'm wired that way. But again, I deal with crippling depression, so there's that one for me.
Does it even out the anxiety?
I think it's one of those things where it's like, I think it was funny. So there's a lady that her name is Delynn that we met in Reno, and she was talking about, because after hearing me describe our relationship, she goes, I really expected a more intensity out of James, because I think James is like super intense in the pen. She goes, but it's different. You guys have a different style. She goes, because James is laughing right after a run. She goes, and I watched you walk out and decompress for like 30 seconds. Because I take that big and then go on. And she's like, it's different. Like, you guys handle things differently. Now, someone not knowing us, she didn't take him as intense as I am. And I was like, man, all right. Like, but it was funny because it is the same thing, right? James plans for every bad outcome. So when it works out, he's ecstatic. I just expect it to work out. So yeah, I'm happy, but like, it's not unexpected for it to work out for me. It's always unexpected for things to really go the way they're supposed to if you're dealing with anxiety. And I've had girls that ride for me that deal with anxiety. And again, like bad anxiety, medicated anxiety, because they can't handle all of that. And they're smart enough to know that not everything works the way it's supposed to.
I'm not on medication. I believe in it, definitely. And maybe some days I need it. I have learned how to manage it over the years. I know that I can be so irritating to my husband, because when I've got my list of things, I want them done just like that. So if I ask him to do, I want you to put a horse in the cross ties for me, or I want you to sweep up the area that I forgot to, I will ask him 20 times to do the task until it's done. Because when I say it, I don't want it done like 20 minutes from now. I want it done right now, because he's holding me up from moving on. And that kind of sucks, because I do the same thing with my kids. So then I just get irritated and I go do it myself because it's easier. But I do know a lot of people who are probably, I think they call it high functioning anxiety. And I don't have that, thankfully, even though it might sound like I do. I don't. And it would be awful, Remy, because I watch these people in just like a lazy Saturday afternoon at the lake or wherever. It's hard for them to mentally relax and enjoy the moment, because they are concerned about everything around them. And that would suck, to have to live in that life or mindset, because they carry that with them wherever they are, doing every little task. And to think the worst is always going to happen no matter what you're doing. I mean, we kind of talk about it, like, I think of bad outcomes when I'm trail riding, so I limit my time trail riding. But I don't go to the grocery store and think of bad outcomes happening. I don't go to a restaurant out to eat and think of bad things happening. But there are people out there, Remy, who deal with that level of anxiety no matter where they're going or what they're doing. They are dealing with that'd be terrible.
No, and it's like, so yesterday we weaned calves, and James and I have both been really a lot more cognizant about taking time to enjoy all the things we have. We got to practice it. And that's what I think, like when I talked about letting things go, when I talk about a lot of things, a lot of that takes practice, even for me. Like even for as spacey as I can be, it takes practice. So we let all the calves out, and it was around sunset, and James just laid down in the back of the truck. And he was like, I just want to enjoy this moment right now. Like, it's really nice. The weather's really nice. It's really pretty up here. I just want to lay here. And so we just sat in the back of the truck and did nothing. Now, for him, even 5 years ago, that would have been impossible.
Because he can't sit still?
No. And yeah, because there's always something else to do, which then for me translates that I always have something else to do. And then I become that person, right? Like I say, I don't deal with anxiety, but I've been trained now, like there's always something else to do. And so, you know, it was hard for me even yesterday. And he's like, I know this is killing you. And it was because for so long, we always had to step on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's one of those things, like, again, practice taking 5 minutes out of your day to just breathe and relax and enjoy it. And then 10 minutes and then 15 minutes. But it doesn't happen overnight. And if you get trapped in like, I'm supposed to take 20 minutes a day to myself, if you're not used to taking time to yourself, that's a lot of time alone with yourself.
That is funny that you bring that up about James, and he's wired that way to just go, go, go. But it's his mind. And it causes a lot of rift in relationships because of that. Like Brandon, the difference between me and him, when we wake up, he wants to cuddle for 5 minutes. Like, who the fuck has time to cuddle for 5 minutes? I'm not cuddling. When I wake up, I don't want to be cuddled. I want to put my feet on the ground and I'm starting my day running. That is how I am. And that bothers somebody who doesn't have anxiety, because it looks a little bit like I don't love him, which I love him very much. I just don't want to cuddle for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's painful when he's like, no, you're doing it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it.
And so I'm not a big cuddler. James is the affectionate one, but it's just, so it's hard for me, right? Because it's always been that he's such a goer. So then when he wants to take time to stop, I'm like, and again, so there's some anxiety there. What went wrong? Like, why are we stopped? Because, you know, and it was like, and we were talking about something, so what do we give up? Like, we're really busy right now. Because what do we give up? And like, you know, again, I've now molded into an adult that thinks like we don't stop. We don't say no. We just keep rolling. That's not a great way to live either. Like, I mean, I told you yesterday, I'm more tired than I've ever been. And like, I thought I was, and like, it's one of those things you're like, how was I tired before? Like, I'm doing so much more. How was I not? How did I think I was tired before? So it creates a weird relationship when you don't have anxiety, but you are dealing with someone that has anxiety, because you do start to mimic some of those things, right? If I'm not moving, then I'm not doing something right. And as much as I preach like, oh, fuck it, sit down and take a break, which I do, but then I have to fear, is there going to be a backlash because we didn't get something done, right? Not from James, just now what didn't get done that I should have gotten done that day. Well, I'm okay with putting it off, but he didn't used to be okay with putting it off. And he has had to practice, you know, he's had to practice. If it doesn't get done today, but the animals are taken care of, the kids are taken care of, then that's enough for today. Right? But that takes practice. That does not happen right away.
No. For me, you're talking about being exhausted and all of the things. It is easier for me to physically work than it is to, like, I've had to sit down a lot and just try to think, right, Remy, and do things that I'm not used to doing. No physical labor at all. I'm just sitting here. And I feel like, oh my God, I've like sat here for 5 days in a row. I've sat here for hours on end, and I'm so exhausted. And it's because, I think it's because the anxiety, just like so many thoughts are going through my head. And I'm literally just wore down and can't even think anymore from just sitting here. And it's hard to wrap my mind around. But it takes a lot out of me. I've decided it takes a lot out of me to try to put the pieces together. And I think that it comes from the anxiety because I'm doing things that I'm not good at because I've never done them before.
Right. And so that's the other thing, like about anxiety, is it tells you you're not good enough about a lot of things. And again, you can rationally know that you are good enough, or maybe you think that you're not good enough. But part of that is just, it's you, again, retrain your brain. And I say that, and I am not talking about legitimate full scale anxiety because I am not a mental health professional. But you see,
not doctors, folks.
Yeah, but, and I think you see that with a lot of people that are dealing with anxiety and self-doubt, right? You watch them do a lot of manual labor because you know what you have to do, right? I need to rake this up. This needs to get done. We joke about what, like, everyone
you feel
that's been
satisfied,
right? And so, and it's like they joke at our shows, like we are both really anal about the ground at our shows. Like, we want really good footing all the time. But we joke about James having tractor therapy, and it's true. Like, he likes to go drive the tractor and drag, not just because he wants the ground good, but he gets off and he's like, he's way more relaxed, and also
he's reset.
He gets to reset, and then he can think about all those things. And I think, like, the humming of the tractor makes it better because he gets off the tractor. He's like, okay, well, we're going to do this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go do those things. But it allows his brain to just now recalculate what he wants to get done. And like, and like, I have anxiety about weird things, like that I never had before I had kids.
Yeah.
So my dad wants to go on a cruise, like take us all on a cruise. I am petrified of going on a cruise. I never was. We used to cruise all the time. I'm afraid my kids are going to fall overboard. And if you know my kids, that's maybe not an illogical fear, like that they'll climb it.
It would be hard for you to relax.
I wouldn't be able to. Like, it like makes me sick to my stomach when I think about it. There's certain things, like with my kids, that never bothered me before, and I cannot get past now.
I told you my weirdness after I had kids. I was scared to put all 4 of us in the truck together. Like, I thought if we got in a car crash, nope. Or no, I was scared, like, Brandon and I going together, because if we got in a car crash and we both died, who was going to take care of our kids? So then I would choose to stay home because it was going to be me.
Right. But then and then it feeds itself. It's really hard to get away from that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing too is, so I was like a national level gymnast for a long time. Not for forever, but for a long time. And one of the things they taught you was, like, you know, if you got tight in your body, you got hurt. Right. And anxiety does manifest. It manifests in body tightness.
And that's the reason I'm always so sore, like through my neck and my shoulders, because that's where I carry
so my everything anxiety. Comes together, right? So for me, like, I do, if I get tight, it's right here. It's right here. But I've learned my whole, like, I mean, most of my training when I was younger was put everything in a tiny, tiny little circle. So it can only affect one part of your body. And right here doesn't affect your balance. So that's where they tell you to keep it. That's where I learned to keep my anxiety. And I will tell you, like, if I get worried or if things bother me, I feel pain here. And it's not even like lower in your breathing. It's just right there, or feels heavy. Like, I will feel a physical heaviness sitting on my chest. Now I get to brush it off because, again, anxiety is not my jam, right? I'm like,
maybe that's the reason it's easy for you to keep it right there. It's so small, Remy. But I kind of wonder if you might not have a line of people at the horse show having you teach them how to keep their anxiety right here.
But you know what? And I think that's the thing too, is if you're not dealing with like straight mental health issues, you kind of got to fake it till you make it sometimes. And again, with me dealing with depression, is like, I have that blog, right? Ride the Crazy. And there's a short story on there that's called The Grayness. So that's what I deal with depression. It's not anxiety, right? For me, I feel gray sometimes. I don't feel bad. I don't feel good. I have to go through the motions, right? I have to go through the motions until I feel good again. Now, there's been times where it gets really gray and I can't hear anything. I can't feel anything, but I just keep going through the motions until I get there. That's probably not a healthy coping mechanism either, but I don't know any other way.
So when I was looking up the definitions of anxiety and all of that, they was talking about ways to relieve anxiety, like immediate relief. And I'm guessing that some of this stuff crosses over to what you would deal with in depression. And the one thing that they wrote down, I'm like, that is how I deal with it. And I think it's how you deal with depression too. Um, but it says, these are what they said: a hug from someone you love, which when I like, it just feels so overwhelmed with anxiety, I always go to Brandon. I'm like, just hold me. Because I think that it lets me reset and take the breath. Aromatherapy, which is funny because I've got candles all over, and it does make me different smells, whatever makes me calm myself. But the one that stuck out the most was create art. And you are a creator, and so am I. And well, you are talented as an artist, but you also create with your words, which I do as well.
And I think it's like, so for me, if you like look in my notes in my phone or like my little notebook, I write down fragments of sentences a lot, right? Because it comes in my head and I don't want to let it go. And if I don't write it down right then it just floats away and I don't have it back anymore. And then I can go back and rebuild those short stories. Sometimes I'll look back and I was like, I have no idea where I was going for, but it lets me get it out, right? I don't let it sit and fester. And that's part of it. You can have this really healthy artistic output, but if you don't, it's almost like those thoughts then stay in your head and turn into something like an abscess. They turn into something that you don't want.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I read your blog, right? You sometimes have a hard time articulating, like when we were talking about success, it's hard for you to articulate why success was hard to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then your blog was awesome about it. But it's true. Sometimes it's harder to get it out, but if you can get it out on paper and just kind of like vomit it out into the world and then come back and edit it, you feel better. And you're, again, in control of it, right? Written word is much easier to control than spoken word.
But it is a release too. You know, it is just such a release. I don't know. I guess I just never really thought about it, but yeah, I think about you, and you don't deal with anxiety, you deal with depression, but it's the same thing. And you create, you draw, you write, and maybe that's our form of self-care.
No, for me, I really enjoy writing. I enjoy drawing. I enjoy doing the leather work, but it's because, and part of it for me is writing. Like once I start writing, I can let all these other pieces out. Like I don't stop. I never have. That's always been the way that I wrote everything, from term papers to short stories, to long stories, to poetry. Once I start, I just let it keep going. Right. Mm-hmm. And I can get it all out. Now, some of that will never see the light of day, but I feel so much better. It feels so much lighter afterwards. No matter what I was writing, it felt lighter afterwards because that was a piece of me that I could now get out and show into the light. That's a big part of it, is recognize those pieces of yourself, because a lot of them that have us doubting ourselves are beautiful pieces of ourselves, but you hide them in the dark or you don't give them enough power. And there's power in anxiety too. It does make you super aware of situations, right? It makes you think of all those things and it lets you plan for all those things. I am a horrible planner, and maybe if I had some more anxiety, it would help me with these things. But I'm saying that because like there's, for every bad piece of you, there can be a positive outcome for at least part of it, not all of it, but at least part of it. You know, and again, so I deal with depression, which means you reflect on yourself a lot if you're honest. Like I spent years in therapy, and but I'm aware it's made me more empathetic. It makes me realize that not everyone processes the same thing all the time, like in the same way. So the hard part about depression is that people are like, you don't have a reason to be sad. And I'm like, I wish depression was sadness. I wish that's what it was, because that's what people think. If you're depressed and you're sad, I'm not sad a lot. I'm just nothing, which I think is even worse than being sad. So I'm nothing. And then you have guilt because you don't have a reason.
It just feels like.
Yeah, like I now have guilt because I shouldn't be depressed, right? And you're like, It's not helping my depression. But when you give light to those bad parts, or what you think are bad parts, because they're not bad parts of you, when you give light to them through creativity and you do something constructive with it, right? Your blog, creating all the digital media, you're creating this, right? You're putting parts of you out there and you're showing them to the light, and you're finding other people that are drawn to that light too, right? You draw people to you.
I told you this already, but I'm going to share it again because I think it's a really cool thing. But when I was at Black Hawk yesterday, or Monday, you are right. God, today is Wednesday.
It's because it's too early.
I know. Can't think, can't function. On Monday, while I was there, this young man came up to me after I spoke, and he said, "I can't really believe that you're here." And I said, "Oh," and he was like, "I just never thought that I'd actually meet you guys." Well, you weren't there, so it was me. And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yes." And he was there in support of his girlfriend. He was from Missouri, and he was serving for our country. And he was over in Iraq, I think he said. And he said he was listening to us, listening to some of the stuff I'd previously done. And he said, "I know that your stuff's geared towards women more, but," he said, "there's a lot of good things that you guys share that people just don't want to talk about." And he said, "I can tell you that it got me through some really dark times in a place that I didn't necessarily want to be." And I'm like, "Well, thank you. That means a lot to me." And yeah, the more that you can share your story so people know that they're not going through something alone. And, I think that you shared something that was super funny about the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Water
your own yard.
Water your own yard. Yes. Yeah. And
that's the water bill's higher. If the grass is green on the other side, the water bill is probably...
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, you shared that a while back. And you think about that because we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of looking around and looking at somebody else and be like, "Oh gosh, they have got the life. I wish I had their life." Well, really? I mean, are there people who really thought, without you telling them, that you deal with depression, Remy?
No, it's one of those things too. So another good thing that's come out of not just this podcast, but I know her in real life. Not that I don't know you other people in real life, but I know her in real life. She made a post about that she didn't think she was enough as a mother, right? She didn't feel like she was enough, and that she gave up this whole other life to be there, and she had kind of struggled with it. And she finally was really comfortable in what a badass job she's doing. And she's awesome. She's amazing. And I commented, I was like, "Who do I need to kick in the shins?" Because that's my joke is, I never say I'll kill somebody for you, but I will kick them in the shins for sure. I'll go kick them in the shins. And she made the comment. She goes, "No, part of it's with you because you've allowed me to be all the things I wanted to be, and that it's okay to be those things and not the idea of something else." But it's true because you think that everyone else has it figured out. And especially when you're younger, they've got it figured out. They know what they're doing. No, man, like nobody's really got it figured out. And I think the other part for me growing up was finally figuring out that my parents didn't have it figured out, right? We go to our parents because they're supposed to know the things. I'm a parent now. I don't know the things I'm supposed to know. And I know a lot of things. But like when you realize that your parents are just people too, muddling their way through life, it makes it easier for you to forgive them for mistakes. It makes it easier for you to forgive yourself for mistakes because nobody has it figured out. They really don't. Like we're all just out here winging it and doing our best.
So last night was Bronson's first night of football practice for me, and he was so excited. The kid's obsessed with football. And I was so excited that it was his first night of football practice because he's just been nutso. I mean, I've never caught so many footballs. He's throwing footballs at me constantly. He's slapping me on the face with those little sticky gloves that he always wears. He's asking me about nut cups and shoes and how to like make sure they're not going to fall off when he's running. And I'm like, "Child, I know nothing about any of this stuff." Anyway, so I take him, and I was excited to drop him off there. He gets out of the truck, and we've got to put on all of his stuff.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but we get him dressed on the side of the road. I'm parked with our dually in a really, I mean, these are town streets that are small. I was kind of parked off the curb. I wasn't parked in a place where I could leave the truck there and haul his little butt across the field because they were all the way in the far corner. So he's like, all right, you're going with me, right, Mom? And I'm like, no, I'm not going with you. You can walk it. Mom, he stomps his little foot. Mom, why can't you be that mom who does things more with me? And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, get to walking. I'm not going over there with you.
But it's true, right? But it's that you think your parents can do everything. Like, and then when you grow up, you're like, oh man, they didn't know what they were doing either, which isn't a bad thing. But like, when you're younger, that's what you think, that they know, that they have the answer. And I think you see that like when you're looking to your trainers or your coaches or your mentors, even your friends, like, oh man, they have it figured out. And I think that we've entered a new age of people being aware of what's wrong with them, like a little more self-aware, right? This
yes,
is what
I agree with that.
Like, this is what I deal with. This is how I deal with it. Maybe it's not the greatest thing because, like, you know, we talk about it with horse trainers and you see it in almost every meme about horse trainers, why they drink or smoke or do all this. And we run on caffeine. Like, the joke used to be caffeine, cocaine, and nicotine. It's not anymore, thank God. But, you know, like, that was the joke. How do horse trainers survive? Caffeine, cocaine, and nicotine. We're not in the 80s anymore, but we all survive on like 19 cups of coffee a day and water and the hope that we're doing the best we can for you. But, you know, people want an immediate answer and you're like, yeah, I don't have one. I wish I did. I wish this was cookie cutter and I could tell you that 2 + 2 = 4, but 2 + 2 = 4, 1 + 3 = 4, 10 - 6 = 4. There's a lot of ways to get to 4. And I think it's actually great that we've entered that, right? That not everything works for everyone. And we're a little more aware of that than we were before because James jokes about it too. So with ADD, right? I have it for sure. I am a space cadet, right? It makes me, again, there's a lot of benefits for that, but I for sure have it. I'm pretty sure that some of my kids have it. Pretty sure James has it too. And it's part of the reason, like, I can't work a 9 to 5 because I would lose my goddamn mind, like, for sure. Because I like to do a lot of different things. I'm going somewhere with this, back to the ADD. But like when we were in high school, that was a new diagnosis. Like, I was at the beginning of that really being a big diagnosis.
Thing.
You know, they just kind of told you were dumb. Like, why can't you sit still? Why can't you do these things? Now, again, I'm highly functioning, so I could do all the things and then get done. And my thing was in school, get everything done so now I can walk around the classroom and talk to people. Like, all of my, every progress report, every report card I had, Remy is good. She talks too much in class. I'm like, yeah.
My report card would still say that today.
Mine too. But you know, like when I was in high school, they didn't help you that way. It was just get it done. Be good at what you do. Put your head down. And now I think sometimes we overvalue what everyone has, but I think it'll come back to the middle. We are all starting to realize that we're all broken in some way. And it's okay to be broken. It's not okay to sit in all the broken pieces, but it's okay to recognize how we're broken and then reach out to other people. Because for me, the worst thing is being lonely, right? Yeah. Like, to think that you are the only person that feels like this. And anxiety and depression will both trick you into that. Nobody else feels this way. You're the only one. You're the only piece that's broken in this deal. And that's horrible. Like, I mean, that's a horrible feeling, to feel alone in that emptiness or in that pain or in that agitation, in that anxiety, is feeling alone. You're not alone. Reach out, because trust me, someone else is feeling what you're feeling, and sometimes they can help you manage it.
And now, you know, folks, that we have it too.
Yeah. And it's true. You know, like we said, we're not mental health professionals. For me, I have to write lists, not because I feel good about checking them off. Like, for me, if I don't go in order, my list, right? Like, so you have to go in order. I don't have to go in order, but I have to have a list because I'll just spin off and forget that I was supposed to do something. Like, but for me, so for you, you have to have lists. It makes you feel better. James is the same way. He's got those sale cards and he loves checking off the boxes. So right? You're accomplished. Things are done the way you want them done. And I think that's the other thing that anxiety I've seen it in a lot of people. There's one way to do things and we have to do it that way, because if we don't do it my way, then it's not the right way. And I'm like, it got done. It's
I
great.
might
Like,
have that.
and that's not wrong, right? It makes you efficient. It makes you very good. It makes you very driven. And as you get older, I think it's easier if you're not. I think it's easier to take that breath. But again, it's practicing that. Practice the breath, practice the pause. And for some people, all you're going to get away with is 2 minutes to begin with. But practice 2 minutes to yourself with your brain, which is not always super enjoyable. And I can tell from your body language that this also makes you very uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah,
And it's,
well, because I'm having anxiety, Remy, because I'm like, oh, I gotta go here soon.
yeah. And so I think that, you know, like for you, you said you like to create, you like to have lists. Okay, so that's how you deal with anxiety. Are there other tricks for you that help you get through your day?
I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's listening. It's listening and breathing. I do a lot of breathing exercises. And it's not like weird breathing, but it's
Even if it
controlling.
was, of course.
Yeah. It
Right.
works.
So that's a good starting point for people. Figure out how you breathe. Like for me, again, like I'm a giant hippie, so it doesn't matter anyway. But I do like a lot of yoga. I lay on a Shakti mat, which is it's kind of like a bed of nails, but it's plastic. I lay on that for 20 minutes a night. Do you know how hard that was to begin with? Even for me, for someone that can stop to lay there in the dark for 20 minutes and do nothing. That was a lot because I don't like the things I see in my head after about 10 minutes. Now I can lay there for 45 minutes and it's great. And now I can control all of that, but I had to practice to get to there.
And it would be hard for me to do because that would be take away time from what I could be, I could be accomplishing something in that time. That's the reason I could never tan. I would never want to tan. Like that sounds like torture. Who has time for that shit? I can't even go get my hair done anymore because I'm like, it makes like literally, I feel like my skin is crawling. It's too.
No, and so my advice, and this is my advice for people that have anxiety that I deal with personally in an everyday life, right, is if the sky isn't falling. But that's hard. And you have to practice that. Like, again, I say all these things, and I know that people think it's easy for me. I don't deal with anxiety, but I am surrounded by people that deal with anxiety. And I think part of the reason I attract those people is because I'm very level. Like, that doesn't mean I'm high. It doesn't mean I'm great, but like, I don't change a lot. So I think that's why I attract people with anxiety, because
you're calm.
I can, right? I'm the calm. Like I can captain this ship and keep us afloat. But and you see it in people's writing. You see it the way they ride their horses. They want to micromanage and make everything happen immediately the way they want it to. And there's a reason that my blog is called Ride the Crazy. Just ride the crazy. For me, it's easy. Ride it out, right? Horses, people, no matter what, just shrug your shoulders. But I have to tell these people, and a lot of my good friends, just practice. Like you have to practice that, right? Don't micromanage your horse. Don't micromanage your kids. Don't micromanage yourself. Don't micromanage your spouse. And I don't say that because I think I'm better, but I see the effects of it outwardly. So I tell people, right, just take that breath. And at first, like you said, for breathing, right, just take a breath and then take another breath, because the world will not end if you didn't get it done. But that is hard. And again, logically, you know that to be true. The world's not going to end if I don't do A before B. It is hard mentally to grasp that. So I tell people, like, take that breath. And if you can take that breath and just hold it for 30 seconds and then reevaluate. And if you still feel that bad about it, go do it. But, take the breath first. Practice being quiet. Practice some sort of solitude. And for me, like I have to meditate. I have to, your dog. I have to meditate. I have to do those things, because if not, I go to a different place, not the same place as you, but a different place. But, go out, create. Even if you're not good at, and this is the other thing for creating, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, I don't draw well, or I don't do this well. Who cares? If it makes you happy, who cares? I saw this meme yesterday and it was awesome. It was like, trace the drawing you have in your journal. Admire old cars without knowing how to fix them. Try painting with the wrong brush. Who cares if you don't know all the steps to do it? Just do some of them. But a lot of people don't have that, right? I have to know all the things to get it done. You don't have to know all the things to get it done. And anxiety will tell you, you do have to know all the steps, that you have to be in perfect control.
It does, yes. Well, Remy, my anxiety is kicking in right now as I hear people pulling into my yard for lessons this morning. Thank you guys for joining us today. Great convo, Remy. I'm glad to see you this week. It's been fun. We'll be back next week. Don't forget you can catch us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts.
So please like, subscribe, and follow. Our viewership is growing. Also, hopefully we have some merchandise coming up. I'm working on it right now. Fingers crossed. And, you know, like we said, be brave. Or be bold, be brave, be humble.
Be humble. And for those of you who wondering minds, our net worth is increasing. $8.
$8. We're like at $8.06. So when you see me flying around to horse shows,
no, might be sporting a new fur coat here soon.
It's all because of you. So
dripping in diamonds.
Yeah. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week, guys. Bye.